The rain drummed against the bedroom window as he stood frozen in the hallway, his hand hovering over the doorknob. He'd come home early from his business trip, eager to surprise his wife with the news about his potential promotion. The apartment was supposed to be empty. She'd mentioned visiting her sister this week. But voices drifted through the crack in the door, and one of them definitely wasn't female. "I can't keep doing this." His wife's voice carried a tremor he'd never heard before. "The guilt is eating me alive." A man's voice responded, smooth and reassuring. "You've told me 100 times you're going to leave him. When, Sarah? When are you actually going to do it?" Sarah. His wife of 7 years. The woman who'd promised to stand by him through thick and thin, who'd smiled at their wedding reception while her father gave that touching speech about commitment and loyalty. "It's complicated, Derek. The apartment's in both our names. We have the joint accounts, the car lease, everything's intertwined. And he's not a bad person, that's what makes it so hard." He pressed himself against the wall, his heart hammering so loudly he was certain they'd hear it. "But you don't love him anymore," Derek pressed. "You said so yourself." The pause that followed felt like an eternity. He held his breath, part of him desperately hoping she'd deny it, that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. "I don't," Sarah finally whispered. "I haven't for a long time. I wish there was an easy way out. If he just disappeared before my birthday next month, that'd be perfect. Clean break, no mess, no difficult conversations." The words hit him like a physical blow. His vision blurred, and he had to grip the wall to steady himself. 7 years. 7 years of working 80-hour weeks to build their future, of putting her through graduate school, of believing in their partnership. "Your birthday's in 4 weeks, Derek said. "That's not much time." "I know. Maybe I'll tell him after the party. My parents are coming, and I don't want to ruin it for them. They adore him." He backed away from the door slowly, carefully, each step measured and deliberate. His mind raced through 1,000 thoughts at once, confrontation, anger, heartbreak, but beneath it all, a cold, calculating clarity began to form. She wanted him to disappear. He could arrange that. In the guest room, he sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out his phone. The email from the international recruitment firm was still in his inbox, dated from 3 days ago. Senior Financial Director position, Singapore office. They'd headhunted him specifically, offering a salary that was nearly double his current one, but he'd been hesitant. Moving abroad seemed too drastic, too disruptive to the life he and Sarah had built. What a fool he'd been. His fingers flew across the screen. "I'm interested in the Singapore position. How quickly could we move forward?" The response came within minutes. "We can fast-track for the right candidate. Are you available for a video interview tomorrow?" He glanced at the closed bedroom door, behind which his wife was probably still planning their separation with another man. "Yes. Morning, my time." Over the next hour, sitting in the growing darkness of the guest room, he began to formulate a plan. He was a financial analyst. Strategy and contingency planning were literally his job. If Sarah wanted a clean break, he'd give her one so clean it would shine. He opened his banking app and reviewed their accounts. The joint checking held about $12,000. The savings, the one he'd been contributing 90% to for years, had just over $68,000. Technically, legally, he had every right to half. But he'd earned nearly all of it. His personal account, the one she never asked about because she'd never shown interest in their finances beyond spending, held another $45,000. He pulled up the lease agreement for their apartment. Month to month after the first year. He checked the utilities, all in his name. The car lease, his name, his credit. A grim smile crossed his face. She wanted him to disappear. He'd vanish like smoke. The video interview at 6 a.m. went better than he could have imagined. The hiring manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, seemed impressed by his portfolio and even more impressed by his willingness to relocate immediately. "Most candidates need at least 3 months to wrap up their affairs," she said, her British accent crisp through the computer speakers. "You're certain you can be here in 4 weeks?" He thought of Sarah's birthday, circled in red on the kitchen calendar. 3 weeks and 6 days, to be precise. I have some personal matters that will be resolved by then. Excellent. I'll have the contract drafted by end of business today. The relocation package includes temporary housing for 3 months, shipping for your belongings, and a signing bonus of $25,000. After the interview, he sat in the quiet guest room and allowed himself exactly 5 minutes to grieve. Not for the marriage, that was clearly already dead, but for the future he'd imagined. The children they'd talked about having. The house they'd planned to buy. The retirement they'd joked about spending on a beach somewhere warm. 5 minutes. Then he got to work. First, he called his attorney, someone from his firm who specialized in family law. They'd played racquetball occasionally, nothing more, but the man was discreet and competent. I need to understand my rights regarding marital assets, he explained, laying out the situation without emotion. Joint accounts, lease agreements, the works. And I need to file for divorce, but I need it timed very specifically. His lawyer listened, asked pointed questions, and then outlined his options. Legally, you're entitled to half of all marital assets. Since you can prove you contributed more than 90% to the savings account, you could argue for a larger share. And if you're not seeking alimony or any of her separate property, this could be very straightforward. No fault divorce in this state, no children, limited shared assets. We could have papers ready to file in 2 weeks. Perfect. I want them served on September 15th. That's oddly specific. It's her birthday. The lawyer paused. That's cold. She wanted me to disappear. I'm just granting her wish. Over the next week, he moved through his days like an actor in a play. He went to work, came home, had dinner with Sarah while she smiled and asked about his day, all while knowing she was texting Derek under the table. He played the role of the devoted husband while systematically dismantling their life together. The bank transactions were handled carefully, legally. He transferred his contributions from the savings account, $61,000, leaving her with $7,000. The joint checking, he split exactly in half. His name came off the lease with a simple 30-day notice. The landlord was apologetic but understanding when he explained he was relocating for work. What about your wife? The landlord asked. She'll need to decide if she wants to sign a new lease herself or find somewhere else. That's her choice. The utilities were trickier. He couldn't simply cancel them without notice, that would be illegal, but he could transfer them to Sarah's name. He sent her an email from a new address he created specifically for this purpose, using language that seemed casual and reasonable. Hey, I'm restructuring some bills for tax purposes. Can you take over the electric and internet accounts? I've already contacted the companies. You just need to confirm with your signature. Sarah, who'd never paid attention to their finances, signed the transfer forms without reading them carefully. He sold the car back to the dealership, taking a small loss but walking away with $18,000 in cash. They didn't need 2 cars in the city anyway, and Sarah's sedan was entirely in her name. His belongings were sorted ruthlessly. Keep, donate, trash. He'd lived as a minimalist in his 20s and could do it again. The shipping company scheduled a pickup for September 14th. Everything he owned would be in a container heading to Singapore while Sarah was sleeping, dreaming of her birthday celebration. Every evening, he listened through the walls as Sarah talked to Derek on the phone. She'd grown bolder, not even trying to hide it anymore. Perhaps she thought he was too trusting, too blind to notice. Perhaps she was right about the man he used to be. But he wasn't that man anymore. With 1 week remaining, he started to notice Sarah's growing excitement. She hummed while making coffee, spent hours on the phone planning her birthday party, and seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She probably thought Derek would be there, her secret lover integrated into their social circle, hidden in plain sight. The irony wasn't lost on him. I was thinking, Sarah said over breakfast on a Tuesday morning, maybe we should talk about taking a vacation soon. You've been working so hard, and I feel like we've been drifting apart. He looked at her across the table, this woman he'd loved for 7 years, and felt nothing but distant pity. She was trying to ease her guilt, to make the inevitable abandonment feel less cruel by pretending to care now. That sounds nice, he said neutrally. After your birthday. Her smile was radiant. Perfect. Maybe somewhere tropical. Sure. Whatever you'd like. That afternoon, he received the final confirmation from Patricia. His work visa was approved, his contract was signed, and his start date was set for September 16th. The apartment in Singapore was ready, a sleek high-rise with a view of the Marina Bay. His new salary would hit his new bank account, one Sarah knew nothing about, on the 1st of October. He'd lined up everything like dominoes, and soon, he'd tap the first one and watch the cascade. His best friend, James, was the only person he'd told the truth to. They met for drinks at a quiet bar across town, somewhere Sarah would never think to look. "You're really going through with this?" James asked, nursing a whiskey. "She wanted me gone. I'm just being accommodating." "It's brutal, man. Are you sure you don't want to confront her? Give her a chance to explain." He thought about that conversation he'd overheard, the casual cruelty in her voice. "If he just disappeared before my birthday, that'd be perfect. She's had plenty of chances, to be honest. She made her choice." James shook his head. "And Derek? You're sure about him?" "I've done my research." It had been easier than expected. Derek wasn't exactly a prize, a sales manager with a drinking problem and an ex-wife who'd left him for similar reasons. "He's going to ghost her. I made sure of it." "How?" Let's just say Derek's ex-wife was very interested to know he was dating again, especially given the alimony modification she's been seeking. She's filing new paperwork next week, and Derek's going to be too busy dealing with lawyers to worry about Sarah. James whistled low. "You've thought of everything." "That's what I do." The weekend before the final week, Sarah threw herself into party planning with manic energy. She'd invited 30 people to a rooftop bar, spared no expense on decorations and catering. He watched her put it all on their joint credit card, the one he'd already paid off and was planning to close, and said nothing. "Aren't you excited?" she asked on Sunday evening, surrounded by bags of party supplies. "It's going to be amazing." "I'm sure it will be memorable," he replied truthfully. That night, while Sarah slept, he made his final arrangements. The divorce papers were ready to be served by a professional process server. The moving company confirmed their pickup for the 14th. His flight was booked for the 16th, giving him just enough time to handle any last-minute issues. He drafted an email to be sent automatically on the morning of the 15th. "Sarah, by the time you read this, you'll have been served with divorce papers. I know about Derek. I've known for weeks. You said you wanted me to disappear before your birthday, and I decided to grant your wish. The apartment lease is in your name now, as are all the utilities. The joint accounts have been legally divided according to contribution. You'll find the documentation attached. I've taken what's mine and left what's yours. I'm starting a new position abroad and won't be returning. Please direct all future communication through my attorney. I hope you get exactly what you wanted. Short, factual, unemotional. Perfect." On the 13th, 2 days before her birthday, Sarah cornered him in the kitchen. "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered if she felt any real guilt at all or if this was just performance. "Everything's fine. Just work stress." "Well, after the party, we should really talk. About us, about our future." "Absolutely," he agreed. "After the party." She kissed him on the cheek, and he felt nothing. September 14th dawned grey and cold, a harbinger of autumn. He woke at 5 a.m., careful not to disturb Sarah, and began his final tasks. The moving company would arrive at 9, while Sarah was at her yoga class, a schedule he'd memorized months ago, back when he'd been planning anniversary surprises instead of orchestrated vanishings. At 8:30, he kissed her goodbye like any other morning. "Have a good class. I'll see you tonight." "Can't wait for tomorrow," she said, practically bouncing with excitement. "It's going to be perfect." "I'm sure it will be," he murmured. The movers were efficient and professional. By noon, everything he owned, which wasn't much after his ruthless culling, was packed in a shipping container bound for Singapore. The apartment looked strangely empty with his belongings gone, but Sarah likely wouldn't notice. She'd never paid attention to his things anyway. He spent the afternoon at James's apartment, going over the final checklist like a general reviewing battle plans. Last chance to back out, James offered, though they both knew he wouldn't. She made her choice when she started sleeping with Derek. I'm just making mine. The process server was scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning, September 15th. Sarah's birthday. She'd be home alone. He'd made sure of that by suggesting he needed to run early errands for the party. The party that would never happen, at least not the way she'd planned. That evening, he returned to the apartment one last time. Sarah was in the bedroom, on the phone with someone, probably Derek, probably finalizing their plans for how they'd navigate the party together without anyone suspecting. He packed a single suitcase with the essentials he'd need for the next 2 days. Clothes, toiletries, his passport and documents, and the small box of photographs from his childhood. Everything else was either shipped or discarded. Going somewhere. Sarah appeared in the doorway, eyeing the suitcase with casual curiosity rather than suspicion. Early flight tomorrow for a work thing. Last minute. I'll be back in time for the party though. The lie came easily now. Oh. She looked genuinely disappointed. On my birthday morning. I'm sorry. I tried to reschedule, but you know how it is. He zipped the suitcase closed. I'll make it up to you. She sighed dramatically. You better. This party is important to me. I know it is. That night, he lay awake in the guest room. He'd been sleeping there for weeks, claiming work stress and not wanting to disturb her, and listened to the sounds of the apartment. The hum of the refrigerator he wouldn't own by tomorrow. The distant traffic from streets he'd never walk again. The creaking of the bed as Sarah shifted in her sleep, dreaming of whatever future she'd imagined with Derek. At 4 a.m., he rose silently and left. Just walked out the door with his suitcase, his laptop bag, and his wallet. He didn't look back. James had offered his spare room for the next 2 nights, and he accepted gratefully. From there, he watched his phone as the automated systems he'd set in place began to activate. At 8 a.m., the process server knocked on the apartment door. He'd paid extra for a professional who would wait, who would ensure Sarah personally received the documents. At 8:15, his automated email sent. At 8:30, the credit card company's notification went through, informing Sarah that the joint account had been closed and the balance transferred to pay off the remaining balance, which was her party expenses. At 9 a.m., the utility company's automated systems began the transfer to her name, triggering emails confirming she was now solely responsible for all bills. At 9:30, the bank's notification confirmed that the joint savings account had been closed, the funds distributed according to legal contribution percentages. His phone began ringing at 9:45. Sarah's number. He declined the call and blocked it. She could communicate through his attorney from now on. Then came the texts, dozens of them, scrolling across his screen. What the hell is this? You're divorcing me. Where are you? This is insane. We need to talk. How could you do this? Please, just call me. We can work this out. I can explain about Derek. You're being cruel and vindictive. Answer your phone. He deleted them without reading most of them and blocked her number entirely. James sat across from him in the small apartment, coffee growing cold between them. How do you feel? He considered the question honestly. Free. The rooftop bar was already set up when Sarah arrived at noon, hoping to finalize details for the evening party. 30 people were supposed to celebrate her 29th birthday tonight. Now, she stood among the decorations she'd spent weeks planning, her phone pressed to her ear as Derek's number went straight to voicemail for the 15th time. The bartender approached awkwardly. There's an issue with the card on file for tonight's event. What? No, that's impossible. Run it again. We've tried 3 times. It's been declined and actually shows as closed. Her hands trembled as she pulled up her banking app. Joint checking, 0 balance, account closed. Joint savings, 0 balance, account closed. Her personal checking, the one she'd kept minimal because he handled the finances, had $800. The party deposit alone had been $3,000. I need to make a call, she stammered, stepping away. But who would she call? Her husband, Ex-husband, the papers said, had vanished. Derek wasn't answering. She pulled up her contacts, scrolling through names. Her friends, her co-workers, her family. How would she explain this? "Hi, I was cheating on my husband. He found out and legally dismantled our entire life in 3 weeks. And now I'm about to be homeless because I never paid attention to whose name was on anything." At her parents' house across town, her mother answered on the 3rd ring. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. Are you excited for tonight?" Sarah burst into tears. The full story took an hour to extract, between sobs and attempts at justification. Her father took over the call at some point, his voice cold in a way she'd never heard directed at her before. "Let me understand this correctly," he said. "You were having an affair, you wanted him gone, and now you're shocked that he left." "Dad, it's not that simple." "It sounds exactly that simple. You made vows. You broke them. Actions have consequences." "But he took everything." "Did he? Or did he take what was legally his? You said the lawyer's letter explained the asset division." She had thrown the lawyer's letter across the room without reading past the first page. Now, retrieving it with shaking hands, she forced herself to read the itemized breakdown. Every withdrawal, every transfer, meticulously documented with contribution percentages. 61,000 from savings, his contributions over 7 years. 6,000 from checking, his half. The apartment lease, his name. The utilities, his name. The car, his lease, his payments. He'd left her exactly what was hers, 7,000 from savings that she'd contributed, 6,000 from checking, and her car. $13,000 and a vehicle. And a cancelled birthday party she couldn't afford. And an apartment she couldn't pay for alone. And utilities she'd never budgeted for. And Derek, who still wasn't answering his phone. By evening, she'd cancelled the party with a generic excuse about a family emergency. Her mother had offered to come stay with her, but Sarah declined. She needed to think. The apartment felt enormous and empty without his presence, without his things. She hadn't noticed before how much space he'd occupied, the bookshelf filled with his financial journals, the corner desk where he'd worked late nights, the closet that held his meticulously organized clothes. All gone. Like he'd never existed. Her phone buzzed. "Finally. Derek. I can't do this anymore. My ex is filing for increased alimony and dragging me through court. I can't afford complications right now. I'm sorry. Take care of yourself." She stared at the message, then at the divorce papers spread across the coffee table, then at the email he'd sent that morning, the one she'd read 50 times, searching for some hint of emotion, some crack in his cold precision. "I hope you get exactly what you wanted." Her birthday. He'd disappeared before her birthday, just like she'd wished. 3 weeks later, Sarah signed a lease for a studio apartment in a worse neighborhood. She'd found a roommate situation first, but the background check revealed the divorce, and the potential roommate had backed out. The studio took her entire security deposit plus first and last month's rent, nearly all of her remaining savings. Her friends had slowly distanced themselves after learning the truth. The story had spread, not from him, her lawyer confirmed, but through mutual friends who'd pieced together the timeline. Cheating wife, methodical husband, the perfect disappearance. At work, she'd been passed over for a promotion she'd expected. Her boss hadn't said it explicitly, but the implication was clear. Personal instability raised questions about professional judgment. Meanwhile, social media showed glimpses of his new life. Not from his accounts, he deleted those, but from his company's page. A photo of their Singapore team, him in the back row, looking focused and professional. An article about their new financial director's innovative strategies. A mention in an industry newsletter about an award he'd won. He was thriving. She was surviving. Her mother visited on a Tuesday afternoon, bringing groceries Sarah couldn't quite afford. They sat in the cramped studio, and her mother asked the question she'd been avoiding. "Do you regret it?" Sarah looked around the tiny space, at the life she'd built from the ruins of her own choices. "I regret how I handled it. I should have been honest. I should have left before. Before you gave him a reason to stop loving you." The words hit like a slap. He stopped loving me first. That's why I... Did he? Or did you stop seeing him? Stop appreciating him? Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. Your father and I watched him work himself to exhaustion to give you the life you wanted. We watched you take it for granted. You're taking his side. I'm taking the side of integrity. You made a vow. You broke it. He didn't owe you kindness in return. After her mother left, Sarah opened her laptop and drafted an email she'd never send. You were right. I got exactly what I wanted. And it turns out what I wanted was based on a fantasy of freedom without consequences. I wanted you gone without having to face what I'd done, without having to admit I'd failed. You gave me that gift. I disappeared you, and in doing so, I disappeared the person I thought I was. I hope Singapore is everything you deserve. I hope you find someone who appreciates what I couldn't see. She deleted it and closed the laptop. Some lessons she was learning came with permanent prices. In Singapore, he stood on his apartment balcony watching the sunset paint the Marina Bay in shades of gold and crimson. His phone showed a notification. The divorce was finalized. 7 years of marriage dissolved in 3 weeks of paperwork. Patricia had invited him to a team dinner to celebrate his first month's success. James had sent a message about visiting next quarter. His new life was taking shape, built on the ashes of the old one. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt something simpler and more profound, free. Sarah had wanted him to disappear, to make her life easier by removing himself from the equation. She'd gotten her wish, but wishes, he'd learned, were tricky things. They came true in unexpected ways. He'd given her exactly what she'd asked for, his absence. And in that absence, she'd discovered what he'd known all along. He'd never been the problem. She had been. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he raised his glass of wine to the skyline, to new beginnings, to the perfect disappearance that had set them both free, though only one of them would thrive in that freedom. Happy birthday, Sarah, he murmured to the wind. I hope it was everything you dreamed it would be. Then he turned back to his new life and didn't look back again.